This sucks! What's up, guys? It's me here. And if you're watching this video, chances are you may have heard about budgeting from all these other YouTube gurus who say that it's gonna change your life, but it actually ended up making things worse. Because while there is no doubt that budgeting helps with tracking expenses, setting financial goals, and building wealth over time, a recent study found that 64% of Americans actually failed at following a budget, with most people giving up within the first few months because it was too difficult to track. And after seeing how many negative comments I got when I uploaded my monthly budget last year, I have to agree, it's not easy. So instead of trying to budget like everyone else and failing miserably in the process, what if we did something different? Now, before I show you what I do instead of budgeting, and how I save an extra $1,000 each month, it's important to point out why budgeting doesn't work for most people. The main reason why budgeting fails is that it requires strict discipline, and a lot of it. You need to be able to track every single dollar coming in and out of your account. Monitor your spending habits, make adjustments on the fly, and hope that nothing unexpected comes up. Because if it does, your budget is gonna go right out the window. For example, a few years ago, I had a budget set aside $300 a month for car maintenance. Then one day my tire blew out and I needed to replace all four tires, which cost $600 just out of pocket. When something like this happens, you either have to break your budget, take out a loan, or pay for it with a credit card. And even though these situations are going to happen from time to time, the bigger problem is when they become a habit. See, sometimes it's easier to spend money than it is to earn it. Like if you get paid $2,000 a month, but then you decide to spend $1,010. You could technically budget for the extra $10, but in reality, you're probably just gonna charge that to a credit card and add another $100 to your overall balance next month. Before you know it, you're stuck in a vicious cycle where you have to spend more money just to maintain your lifestyle. And any sort of savings gets depleted really quickly. That's why, according to the same study, 60% of Americans said they couldn't afford an unexpected $1,000 expense. So if something goes wrong, most people have to go into debt just to pay for it. The good news is that there is a way around this, and it's called a sinking fund. A sinking fund allows you to save a predetermined amount of money each month to cover future expenses, so that you don't have to worry about getting caught off guard or dipping into your emergency savings. For example, let's say you know that you need to replace your tires every 5 years. Instead of budgeting for the unexpected and hoping you have enough to cover the full cost, you can set aside $100 a month into a separate savings account, specifically designated for new tires. If a flat tire were to happen today, you would simply use the $100 that you set aside, and in 5 years you'll have enough money to replace all 4 of them at once. This way you won't have to worry about paying interest on a credit card. You won't have to dip into your emergency savings, and you'll always have money set aside for when something inevitably breaks. But personally, I found that sinking funds aren't quite enough on their own. And if you want to save an extra $1,000 a month, this is exactly what I do instead of budgeting. First, I create categories based on fixed costs, variable costs, and savings. Fixed costs are things that stay relatively the same every month, like rent, utilities, and insurance. Variable costs are things that fluctuate depending on the time of the year, like groceries, clothing, and vacations. And savings is, well, savings. Here's where it starts to get interesting. After you categorize your expenses, you'll notice that some items are completely under your control, while others are not. Groceries, for instance, are completely under your control. So if you wanted to, you could cut back and save an extra $300 a month by cooking more at home. However, you might not be able to reduce your rent or car payment without making some pretty significant changes to your lifestyle. That's why I choose to focus on the areas that I have control over while continuing to pay the bills that I don't. This way, if I'm able to save an extra $300 a month on groceries, great. But if I can't, oh well, at least I'm still staying afloat and not going into debt. Second, you want to distinguish between needs and wants. Needs are things that you absolutely must have in order to survive. Wants are things that you would like to have but aren't absolutely necessary. For example, you could argue that internet is a need because, well, you kinda need it if you want to make money from home. But is a Tesla a need or a want? Probably not. So if you find yourself spending money on things that fall outside of your needs, ask yourself, can you live without it? Could you find a cheaper alternative, or is it worth paying full price for? Maybe you could get away with living with a slightly slower internet connection so that you can drive an older car. Or maybe you're okay with eating at home more often so that you can take an extra vacation every year. Either way, It's up to you to decide where you want to allocate your money, because chances are you have more control over it than you think. Third, avoid the temptation to look at what other people are doing. When you start looking at what other people spend their money on, you run the risk of being influenced by societal norms, peer pressure, and keeping up with the Joneses. They're driving a nice car, so you should too. They have the latest iPhone, so you better get it as well. They spent $100 on avocado toast every weekend, so you might feel pressured to do the same. Now, obviously, you shouldn't compare your net worth or your bank account. But it's also important not to compare your spending habits. After all, you have no idea what their income is, their expenses, or why they're choosing to spend money in the way that they are. Even though someone might have a higher income, a larger house, and fancier cars, they could also have higher expenses. They could be paying for someone else's student loans, or they could be trying to keep up with someone else's lifestyle. Don't get me wrong, if they want to spend their money the way they see fit, that's totally fine. But don't feel pressured to do the same, because you'll just wind up spending more money than you can afford. Fourth, stop expecting the latte factor to make you wealthy. The latte factor refers to the small, seemingly insignificant purchases that add up over time. And fifth, if you want to save an extra $1,000 a month, raise your income. We could sit here and pretend that we could cut back on avocado toast, make coffee at home, and wear the same clothes every day in order to save money. But in reality, if you want to make real wealth, you're going to have to earn more money. And the best part is that you already know this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching a video about how to save money. So ask yourself, how could you make more money in less than an hour? Is there anything you could pick up on the side? Can you ask for a raise at work or start a side hustle? If you're willing to put in the extra effort, there's a very good chance that you can make a lot more money very quickly. That way you'll have enough left over to do whatever you want. At the end of the day, saving money is a lot like losing weight. Everyone says it's going to be easy, but in reality, it takes a lot of effort, consistency, and self-discipline to make it work. But if you follow these tips, you'll be able to take control of your finances and start saving more money without having to resort to ramen noodles for the rest of your life. So with that said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, feel free to add me on social media. I post pretty much daily. So if you want to be a part of it there, feel free to add me there. I post there every single day. So if you want to be a part of it there, feel free to add me there. And besides that, I'll see you in the next video.